Hi, this is Chad from Reichhardt Electronic Innovations. I'm back again here to do a walkthrough of our guidance product labeled PSR. PSR is an acronym. It stands for Pilot System Reichhardt. It's a product that we've had out since the mid 2000s, and it is a very flexible product in that it can do GPS guidance, sensor guidance, and run on a variety of screens via the virtual terminal interface, as well as use a mix and match of different receivers on the market. So it allows us to fill a lot of niches on farms where people want to mix and match different color equipment, screens, receivers, etc., as well as do row guidance. So moving ahead here, I'm going to be doing a little bit of a walkthrough on overall the PSR system, how to operate the system, as well as some general main menu settings. And we'll probably be doing some other videos talking about similar topics. As you can see on your screen right now, we actually have the Reichhardt system, the PSR system, loaded up right now. We are on our main splash page. And from here, we go ahead and just press the OK button one time. And it'll take you to our home screen, as we call it. At the top, you'll see a banner, and it's going to have some kind of a branding. If it's an OEM solution, it may have an OEM name. If you have older software, it may say Ultra Guidance PSR. We did rebrand it here. Now it's just Reichhardt PSR. And then below that we have what a lot of companies call a light bar. It shows us our position of our guidance line and our deviation from the guidance line. Right now, per the simulation I'm running at my desk, I'm about 17 inches to the right of the guidance line. I have an arrow showing I need to go to the left to get back to the line. Below that we have a picture of the sky, blue sky with clouds, a picture of a field, our guidance line, as well as a picture of a tractor, our current heading, our GPS input. So right now we have DGPS, basic L1 correction, and a number of satellites. Right now we're seeing 8 satellites per what I've wired into my laptop. Below that we have our pass number. Right now we're on our original pass. And here to the right, if I click the right arrow key, you can see some more information. So I just named this track test 3. We have our heading information of our guidance line of test 3, as well as our working width. And if we are using some kind of a Reichhardt sourced RTK modem, we can also pick up that information. It's not overly common in the US market, but some other markets like the European market, this is used quite a bit. And then click back to our main page. Also on the main page, you'll see that we have a bar below this. It says a value of 50. This value can go from 0 to 100, and this represents our steering sensitivity or reaction. And this is a value that can be adjusted on the fly while the auto steer is engaged. And what it does is adjusts how much our system responds to deviation, as well as how much we're allowed to move the articulation or the wheels of the machine. To change this value, on the right hand side we have some soft keys. It's the second soft key down from the top. We press and hold this. It'll start flashing, and then below it you see plus or minus keys. And if I hit plus, you can see now this value of 50 increases up to 59, 60, so on and so forth, all the way up to 100 if you hold it down. And you can also dial it all the way down to 0. So there's that. And then to set your value, you would just click on the flashing icon. So we'll just leave it at 27 for now. If you wanted to, you could also hit escape. It would put it back to the original value, which would have been 50. Below this sensitivity value, we have another value. It looks like a line with some arrows pointing left or right. This is our nudge value. And to adjust your nudge value, and it's the same nudge function that you'd see with other guidance systems, it would shift your guidance line left or right with respect to your direction of travel. You would take the next icon over on the right hand side, hold that icon down, and now you'll have right and left arrow keys. And you can see if I do a left arrow key, it goes negative. I have a right arrow key, it goes positive. Right now it's set up in our system to nudge us, looks like 4/10 of an inch with every button click. That can be adjustable to an inch, 2 inches, 6 inches, and that's in a submenu we'll get to a little bit later. The icon at the center at the bottom, it says GPS right now. What that reflects is that we are in GPS steering mode. So I mentioned earlier that we do row guidance as well as GPS guidance. We can go in and change this mode to tack row feelers, sonic sensors, or a mechanical row finder, and we'll touch on that in some separate videos. Today though, we'll focus on the GPS guidance. Then in the bottom right hand corner, we have an icon that looks like a picture of a tractor with an arrow, as well as the number 1. The tractor with the arrow can change depending on direction detection, and that is configured in our setup of the system. In some situations, we can detect forward or reverse direction, and at that point the icon will change, and that will affect how we control the machine, whether we allow steering, or in some cases we can even steer the machine in reverse. And this gives us an indication of what our system is thinking the machine is doing. The icon to the right of that right now has a value of 1. This can have a value from anywhere from 1 to 8. And all that represents is which system or machine profile is currently selected with our system. Back in the past, we used to have Reichhardt systems, PSR systems that could float between multiple make and model machines. And what you could then do is pick profile 1, for example, could be a case combine. Profile 2 could be a AGCO tractor, so on and so forth. You could go into our system and pick a profile, and it would automatically configure to that machine. And you could then float your controller between the machines. What we're finding now more recently, most operators like to leave the controller fixed in the machine. There's less setup, and typically there's not a lot of overlap. Nowadays you'll have the same tractor running year round, and you'll want to have a system in there all the time. On the bottom right hand corner, we have our speed. This is the speed that we get from a variety of different sources. It is configurable in our system on where it comes from, but this then tells us how fast our system thinks we're traveling. To touch on the right hand side, we have some soft keys. We already talked about sensitivity and nudging. On the top right hand corner, we have what we call our guidance engage button. You can see this button right now has a yellow or a white background. That means that there are no active error codes with the system. If I click on this, it'll actually engage the auto steer and start auto steering the machine. And the way you can tell it's active is the icon will turn green. You'll also hear a single beep when it engages. And you can see right now the icon's solid and a green background. If there's something that's preventing the wheels from turning, for example, if I change the speed to 0, I'll go ahead and do that. You can see now the icon is flashing, and what that means is we're engaged, but we're not going to steer the machine. For that period of time, the auto steer will eventually time out and disengage and go back to the white state, just like you see right there. There's a third state with our system. It would change the icon to a red indication. I'm going to go ahead and do that by stopping the GPS output to the system. And give it a few seconds. And now you see it turns to a red icon. And that means there's something preventing the auto steer from engaging. I'm going to go ahead and click on this, and this will actually give us an indication or an error code. And so this is an example of an error code that could pop up. Right now it says error 100, GPS no receiver. And with each version of PSR software, we have a list of all error codes, what causes the errors, and how to treat the symptoms. In this case, we have no GPS receiver. We need to make sure our receiver is physically connected and properly configured, both in the receiver and in the Reichhardt. To acknowledge the error code, in new Reichhardt software, you would click on the acknowledge button. In older Reichhardt software, you may have an escape button down here, or you can always press the OK button. I'm going to go ahead and start sending GPS back to the system. Give it a few seconds, and I'll also give it some speed again. We're going to go ahead and engage the auto steer. We'll let it run for a while. There we go. We're going about 3.1 mile an hour. Auto steer is engaged. Even with the auto steer engaged, these next two soft keys, as we already discussed, you have your sensitivity adjustment, and you can actually adjust the sensitivity while the auto steer is engaged. And a lot of operators will do this to kind of find that sweet spot while they're running. We'll say, okay, it steers pretty good at 60, and then you'd click this button to set it, and now we're running with a sensitivity of 60. Also, we have the nudge, and then you can see right here, if I take this and I start nudging to the right, watch your light bar. It's actually changing to compensate right away. So we're nudging the line to the right, and our light bar number is actually getting smaller. Another feature of this button is if you tap the button, you can now see we have an actual remark or a recentering of the line. And if I hit the OK button again, it'll zero out my line. Another way to recenter your line, and I'll show you this function, I'll nudge it over again and set that. So now we're off by a few inches. If you have newer Reichhardt software and a touch screen, you can just click on the center of the light bar. It'll actually zero out your, or remark your AB line, or recenter your AB line. So that's a really nice quick shortcut. If you pause the machine for a while, come back in to the field, you're off by a little bit, say you're running on DGPS and you have some drift, you can just press the center button here and you're recentered. The next icon down is our wrench icon, and there's two ways to go into menus in our system. We can either press and hold the wrench icon, or we can just tap the wrench icon. If you press and hold the wrench icon, it'll take you to our main menu where we do all our general system information as well as our setup of our system. If you just tap the wrench icon, it'll take us to our GPS steering mode specific settings. I'm going to go ahead and disengage the system, kind of show you the GPS steering mode. So when the system's disengaged, you can tap the wrench button, and now you'll see our GPS menu. This is where we go in to set up all our guidance lines, guidance patterns, and GPS specific settings. If you hold down the wrench button, you'll go to our main menu. This is where we go to our system setup, setting up all our inputs and outputs, diagnostics, and system information, as well as some other features of the system. The bottom icon is used for switching the steering mode. So as we mentioned earlier, we have GPS steering mode selected. If I press and hold this icon, it'll start flashing. You'll have right and left arrow keys. If you have older software, there may be plus or minus buttons instead of left and right arrow keys, but it's the same function. And then as I click these buttons, the mode changes to TAC row guidance, sonic sensor guidance, mechanical row finder, back to GPS. And then when you pick the desired mode, you just hit the flashing icon and you will be in that mode. Also to note, not all controllers may have every mode unlocked. Depending on what's needed, we typically ship systems with, for example, if you're doing a combine, it's not very common to have sonic sensors on combines. So by default, we leave those modes taken out of the system. They can always be added in later by putting in a pin code into our system.